This is just unbelievable, because what happened in the ninth inning didn't feel like baseball anymore. It felt like the entire stadium got pulled into a moment where everything escalated far beyond a simple home run. Shohei Ohtani had just done what he always seems to do when the pressure rises. He changed the game with one swing. A clean, explosive crack of the bat, a ball launched into the night sky, and then silence for a split second before the entire stadium erupted. That was supposed to be the story. Ninth home run. Another highlight. Another reminder of why pitchers and fans alike hold their breath the moment he steps into the box. But instead of celebration being the final chapter of that moment, something else immediately began unfolding at home plate that shifted the entire tone of the game. As Ohtani started his jog around the bases, the reaction behind him was already different from a normal home run sequence. The Rockies' outfield stood still for a moment, not even reacting right away because they had seen enough to know the ball was gone instantly. The crowd roared, phones went up, and the energy inside the stadium felt like it had peaked. But while Ohtani crossed second base and headed toward third, attention at home plate shifted in a way nobody expected. The umpires were gathering around the bat. At first it looked routine, something minor, something procedural. Equipment checks happen in baseball all the time, especially after big moments. But this time, it didn't disperse quickly like usual. One umpire stayed. Then another stepped in. Then a third joined the conversation. 3 umpires standing over Ohtani's bat while he was still finishing his home run trot. By the time Ohtani crossed home plate, the celebration felt slightly muted in the background because something unusual was clearly developing behind the scenes. The bat wasn't just being looked at, it was being discussed. Pointed at. Turned over. Examined with a level of attention that immediately drew eyes from both dugouts. The Rockies players noticed it first, leaning forward, trying to understand what was happening. The Dodgers dugout went quiet, watching closely but not reacting. And Ohtani, for the first time since the swing, briefly turned his attention toward the situation unfolding behind him. There was no immediate reaction, no visible frustration, just a calm awareness that something about the moment had shifted. Then the situation escalated further when the inspection didn't end with a quick check. The discussion continued longer than expected, the tone between the officials became more focused, and the bat was eventually removed from play for further evaluation. That's when the energy inside the stadium changed completely. Fans weren't sure what was happening, but they could feel it wasn't normal. Players on both sides could sense it too. A moment that was supposed to belong entirely to Ohtani's 9th home run was now being split between celebration and controversy, even if nothing officially accusatory had been stated out loud. Ohtani didn't react immediately in the dramatic sense. He didn't argue. He didn't approach the situation. He simply watched for a moment, took in what was happening, and then turned back toward the dugout. But the atmosphere had already changed. Because when 3 umpires gather around a bat after a massive home run, it creates questions whether they are spoken or not. And in baseball, unanswered questions always travel fast. The inning continued, but the emotional tone of the game was no longer the same. Every pitch after that moment felt heavier. Every at-bat felt slightly sharper. The Rockies tried to refocus, but the shift in energy was already in motion. Ohtani, meanwhile, remained steady, almost unaffected on the surface, but clearly more locked in than before. It wasn't anger that showed, it was control. A tightening focus that players recognize immediately when a superstar decides the game has entered a different phase. Inside the Rockies' dugout, there was frustration building, not necessarily aimed directly at Ohtani, but at how quickly the situation had turned from a baseball moment into something surrounded by scrutiny. Because no matter what the outcome of the bat inspection would be, the damage in terms of momentum had already been done. The crowd was split between excitement over the home run and confusion over what the umpires were doing. And confusion in a stadium always creates tension. For Ohtani, though, the response came in the only way he ever truly responds in moments like this, through performance. Not words, not confrontation, but presence. The very next sequences of the game carried a different weight when he was involved. Even when he wasn't directly at the plate, his influence was still shaping how pitchers approached the zone. The Rockies' pitchers were more cautious, more deliberate, more aware that every mistake against him could turn into something bigger than just another hit. Because now, it wasn't just about the home run anymore. It was about everything that followed it. The bat situation continued to be discussed off to the side, but by that point, it had already become part of a larger narrative around the game. Analysts would later question the timing, fans would debate the decision, and both dugouts would walk away with very different interpretations of what happened. But inside the stadium in that exact moment, the reality was simple. Shohei Ohtani had hit another home run. 3 umpires had examined the bat. And the emotional temperature of the game had shifted completely within seconds. As the game moved forward, Ohtani stayed composed, never allowing the situation to pull him out of his rhythm. That's what made the moment even more impactful. Because while everything around him was briefly unstable, questions, reactions, and shifting energy, he remained anchored in his approach. And that contrast between external chaos and internal control is exactly what makes moments like this stick in people's minds long after the game ends. By the time everything settled down, the home run was still the statistical highlight, but it was no longer the only thing people were talking about. The bat inspection, the presence of 3 umpires, and the sudden change in energy had all become part of the story. And through all of it, Ohtani's response was the same as always, quiet, controlled, and focused on the next pitch, as if the game itself had already moved on, even if everyone else was still trying to understand what just happened.